Hi everyone, welcome back. This is going to be the final installment for our Cooking Matters for Childcare Providers. And I made this PowerPoint pretty short. It should only be about 30 minutes. And I basically just wanted to cover what we didn't get a chance to talk about in class. And those were foodborne illnesses, definitions and causes, cooking temperatures, and a little bit about the CACFP program. Now I'd like to add that this is just going to be a recording of me talking straight through, and I can't pause it or give myself a rest. So I apologize if I mess up at any time. You're just going to have to bear with me because I don't really feel like recording this more than once. But anyway, I hope that you learn a little something. And for those of you who are very familiar with the CACFP program, don't feel you have to listen to me ramble on about it. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to talk about is bacteria. And of course, we all know they are single-cell microorganisms that require food and moisture and warmth to reproduce. They also make us sick. And to prevent bacteria from forming onto foods, it's very important to keep in mind hand washing. And it's only one of the only ways to prevent it from traveling. And types of bacteria that is easily transferred from hands onto foods are Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, and Clostridium. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Clostridium. It's not a well-known one. Clostridium actually develops on already cooked food. And what happens is you cook your food and you leave it on your counter for a little while. And that allows, it's just a free-for-all for bacteria. So that's why it's really important that when you cook food, you don't leave it out for too long. Major outbreaks of Clostridium often happen in catered food events or buffets, and that's because the food is all prepped and then it's kind of held at room temperature or even just a little bit above what we consider comfortable room temperature or just that appropriate serving temperature. And those are really dangerous for bacteria, and that's why it's really important to not leave your food out for too long. And also this happens when food is prepared in large quantities, not just like little samples. So it's really important to not leave your food out for too long on your counter. What they recommend is no more than 2 hours at room temperature. And again, when you're putting things after they're cooked immediately in the refrigerator, that's fine. Sometimes you don't want to put hot foods in the fridge because it will actually raise the temperature in the refrigerator to an unsafe temperature. So you need to kind of judge that. Some of them, they make those, we call them soup coolers in the restaurant. They're just frozen water bottles that you stick in prepped food like soups to kind of cool them down faster so you can stick them right in the fridge. And then we have viruses. And the viruses cause diseases that actually live on our DNA. So they're a little scarier than bacteria, which are just using us as kind of a host to live on. These viruses live within us. They are not transmitted from food to you or like developed within the food, but how you get a virus from food is from another food worker. So someone has a virus on their hands. If they have a flu virus, they sneeze onto their hands, they handle the food, and then you eat the food, and that's how you get the virus, and you become the host. And the major causes of viruses transferring, again, is poor personal hygiene. So again, wash your hands, wear clean clothing, make sure you keep your surfaces clean as well. And this is a little saying that we actually had to learn in food safety class. It's called Fat Tom. And what Fat Tom means are just kind of the areas in which bacteria or microorganisms live and thrive. So all of these components interact with the bacteria and allow them to thrive. So the first thing that we have is food, because all microorganisms or all organisms need food to thrive. And many bacteria live on protein. So when you think about it, a lot of the foods that are unsafe to eat raw are meat products, and that's because bacteria like protein. And then you also have yeast and mold. And if you think about moldy bread, that's because yeast and mold like sugars to live on or carbohydrates, and that's why they go for the bread. Now, carbohydrates that have been dried and don't have any water content will definitely not be a good place for mold or yeast to thrive. So that's why bread will get moldy, but flour will not, because, or unless the flour has been introduced to moisture, but flour will generally stay shelf stable. Same with rice and pasta. And then you have pH level. Bacteria and viruses like a neutral pH. So that's why when you put a food in an acid or you pickle a food, that's another means of preserving it. That's because you're raising or lowering, excuse me, the pH level of what the food is surrounded by, and that makes it it deters bacteria from that food. We have temperature. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the danger zone before, but the danger zone is from 41 degrees to 135 degrees. And within that area or within that temperature, that's when bacteria really grow and reproduce exponentially. Remember that the bacteria that is on food at room temperature, and then you put it in the fridge, basically you're just kind of slowing down the reproductive cycle of that bacteria, but you're not inoculating it, you're not preventing it. It just kind of grows more slowly, and that's why when you refrigerate foods, they keep longer, but they still go bad. But then when you put something in the freezer, it actually makes the bacteria completely stop growing, but they're still on the food. So the second you take something out of the freezer and you put it at room temperature, those bacteria kind of wake up and they start to grow and reproduce again. So again, just keep in mind that the bacteria that's on that food will always be on that food until you cook it. And that's why it's important that when you cook foods, you cook them to a certain temperature to destroy the bacteria that's living on them. The time exposed to the danger zone, again, room temperature, is considered to should only be a maximum of 2 hours. Nothing should be left out for more than 2 hours, because that's when things become a little unsafe and things start to spoil rapidly. And then you have oxygen, which, as you guys can think of canning, anytime you take away oxygen from an environment, you're preventing bacteria growth. And moisture. So again, thinking of dehydrated foods, bacteria need some kind of a water content to grow and thrive. And then we have human skin, which has all the ingredients necessary to grow bacteria. There's moisture and protein and a neutral pH and a warm temperature. And this is just an interesting fact that staph food poisoning can be found on the skin of 50 to 70% of all healthy people. So the staph bacteria does not really harm the person that the healthy person that staph is living on, but it can harm an unhealthy person. So that's why it's really important in hospitals or in elderly care facilities that are really susceptible to staph infections. So yeah, staph actually is in higher amounts in skin that has been irritated, like pimples or acne, other wounds, or just inflamed skin. So it's just really important for everybody across the board to be, washing their hands as much as possible, and just keeping clean hygiene procedures in general. And then we come to cooking temperatures. So these are the temperatures that bacteria is destroyed. And the first thing that's listed is ground meat. And where ground meat is different than other types of put together meats like steak or just, poultry, is that a lot of bacteria lives on the outer surface of the meat. So when you're grinding it, you're taking that outer surface and you're letting it touch everything else and get incorporated in every little bit of the meat, where when you're just grilling a steak on the grill, where the bacteria lives on the outside, you're killing the bacteria, and that's why you can have, medium rare steaks, because the middle is not as infected as much. But because you're incorporating all of the components of the meat and smushing it together, you're making that bacteria just kind of be evenly distributed throughout. And then on top of that, you're adding a lot of times meat from more than just one animal. So you've got a lot of times when you have ground beef, they're in large batches of many different animals. So you might have only one animal that's infected, but now you've just infected the entire batch of ground beef that you've just produced. So it's really important to cook your ground meat to 165 degrees. So I don't particularly like eating red hamburgers, even though those are, yummier and a little bit moister, but it's really important to cook anything that's ground thoroughly. A little tip for ground meat, if you do like that juicy burger, if you just add some breadcrumbs or if you add some like Parmesan cheese in the burger meat, it does kind of help retain some of that moisture, so it will taste just as good as eating a red burger. Fresh beef, so those steaks I was talking about, veal or lamb or roast, see how they have a much lower cooking temp of 145, and again, that's because the internal temperature does not have to reach the 165 that ground meat does, because again, the bacteria live on the outer surface. Poultry is 165. Poultry in general has quite a bit of bacteria growing on it, so they just, it's really important to cook poultry all the way through. Pork and ham, again, has a lower cooking temp of 145. And then you have eggs and egg dishes. Now, I've been told that a runny yolk is perfectly okay as long as the whites are, cooked all the way through, because again, most of where the bacteria live are in the egg white. And I will say that farm fresh eggs are less susceptible to carrying bacteria than your store-bought eggs, just because of how the chickens are raised and held. And then last but not least, we have seafood or fish, and that's 145. And just a rule of thumb is just to make sure that you cook until the flesh of the fish is no longer kind of clear but opaque or white. And for all these things, I keep a thermometer at home. I'm usually pretty okay at judging when things are done, but there are a lot of times when I'm just not quite sure, and if I'm serving it to other people, I definitely make sure that stuff is cooked all the way through. Also, back to thermometers, I didn't know this, but it's very important to make sure that your thermometer is calibrated to just appropriately. Anytime that you drop a thermometer, you have a chance of actually messing up the calculation. And the way to kind of recalculate it is there's actually a screw on the back of a lot of readings where you dunk it in either ice water or boiling water, and then you can put it to 32 degrees is freezing, and I forgot what the boiling temperature is off the top of my head, but you can also just go online and Google how to calibrate a cooking thermometer at home, and it will show you. But it's always good to double check to make sure that your thermometer is reading accurately on occasion. All right, hand washing. So I grabbed this right off the CDC website, and the first thing they said in big captions was, hand washing is like a do-it-yourself vaccine. And that's because it is the #1 way of preventing most foodborne illnesses. Washing hands before and after certain activities is one of the best ways to remove germs and avoid getting sick. They recommend 20 seconds. So they say sing the happy birthday song. There might be a couple others out there, I don't know. But I would like to say that this is kind of specific, that they don't actually, you don't need hot water to wash your hands. You just need warm or cool water, because it's mostly the soap that's going to get rid of the bacteria. Now, soap lathers nicer with warm water, but you don't want to use hot water, because actually when you use hot water on your hands, you might actually take away that top layer of skin. Remember, your skin is in layers. And what that can actually do is expose other levels of bacteria that are on your hands. So you might have just washed off 90% of the bacteria on your hands, but by dunking it in hot water, you've just exposed about half that back. And I saw a diagram of this earlier this year, and it was really kind of interesting. So that's just something to keep in mind. Don't use scalding hot water to wash your hands, but just use warm or cold water instead. Now, washing dishes and other things that come in contact with food is a different story. You definitely want to wash your dishes in hot water. So yeah, lather and scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. All right, cleaning surfaces. So this is an important fact. You should always do 2-step cleaning. And the first step is to remove any organic matter on the surface. And those could be grease or oils, proteins, or just crumbs. But the reason is you want to remove those first is because sometimes if you just squirt your countertop with your cleaner, you're not allowing that cleaner to get to the actual countertop surface because the food is blocking the penetration. So again, get rid of anything that's organic, anything that's on the countertop, wipe it down, and then squirt your sanitizer, and that will give you a good clean surface. And they also said on the CDC website that if you're cleaning with just steam, which a lot of people nowadays have those steam cleaners, those are perfectly great. They're sanitary. There's no chemicals, so they're safe that way. Just you want to make sure that you get all of the surface, because a lot of the steam cleaners are kind of centralized in where the nozzle is spraying. And then I don't know why they gave you the Fahrenheit reading for the steamer, because usually steam, in order to be steam, needs to be a certain temperature anyway. But they recommend at least 171 degrees for your steam. And then these are just a list of common sanitizers. Of course, most folks use either a chlorine or an ammonium product. Iodine is mostly used in hospitals. Chlorine is great. It's extremely effective. It's quick acting, and it is effective on a wide range of different types of bacteria. And it's inexpensive. Now, the disadvantages are that it's irritating to your skin. It might cause an odor. You might feel a little lightheaded if you use it, and it kind of loses its activity or loses its strength with the more organic material that it comes in contact with. So again, that's why it's also important to remove those grease stains and other things from your countertop before using a sanitizer, because again, it's not allowing that sanitizer to do its job. And then you have ammonia. And something that's important to remember with ammonia is that it needs at least 30 seconds. It needs time to sit and activate on your countertop. So it just needs time, where bleach is mostly fast acting. But the benefit to ammonia is it is non-toxic. It's odorless and colorless, and it's stable with heat. So if you're cleaning a hot surface, still going to kill the bacteria. Same in it's stable in the presence of organic matter. So again, it will penetrate a lot of the grease, and it's widely active. But the only problem is it takes a while to react. So you can't be just quickly wiping it up after it needs time to sit. And I hope you guys remember never to mix your cleaners, because it would cause fumes, and fumes not so good for your brain cells. All right, and now on to CACFP. CACFP stands for Child and Adult Care Food Program. It is a federal assistance program that's provided by the USDA and is used to kind of subsidize the cost of food service. CACFP plays a role in improving daycares for their nutrition choices or the meals that they make, and it's for low-income families. So CACFP provides meal patterns that give you guidance on components or food groups to serve for your snack and your meals. Now, reimbursements can be for 2 of the main meals, so it could be breakfast and lunch, or lunch and supper, and 1 snack, or it can be 1 meal, 1 main meal, breakfast, lunch, or supper, and 2 snacks. And for daycares and child care centers, to be able to enroll in CACFP, they must be licensed. And reimbursement independent centers and sponsoring organizations receive cash reimbursement for serving meals to enrolled children and adults that meet the federal nutrition guidelines. The CACFP meal pattern varies according to age and types of meals being served. And the centers and daycare homes may be approved to claim up to 2 reimbursable meals. Again, this is what I was saying, breakfast and lunch or supper, so 2 of those 3, and 1 snack, or 2 snacks with 1 meal to each eligible participant each day. So this doesn't necessarily cover every child in the daycare, but specific children that meet the need. And there are tiers that I'll go over. So the program payments for daycare homes are based on the number of meals served to enrolled children, multiplied by the appropriate reimbursement rate. So I think Maine has its own reimbursement rate for each breakfast, lunch, supper, or snack that they provide to serve. And then here's your tier system. So tier 1, daycare homes are those that are located in low-income areas, or those at which providers' household income is at or below 185% of the federal income poverty guideline. And then tier 2, those are the family daycare homes which do not meet the location of the provider income criteria for tier 1, but tier 2 homes may elect to have the sponsoring organizations identify income-eligible children within their care. So you might just have 1 or 2 kids that are identified as being low income, and you can get reimbursable meals for those 1 or 2 kids. And these children would also qualify for free and reduced lunch at school. And then you have the meal component. So it's just like the food groups or My Plate that we talked about. You've got milk in the fluid form, fruits and veggies, and then bread alternatives, and meat alternatives. And the components by meal type, so for instance, your breakfast needs to have a milk, a fruit or vegetable, and a bread or a bread alternative, which I mean any kind of grain. And then for lunch and supper, you need a milk, a fruit or vegetable, either 2 fruits or 2 vegetables, or fruit and vegetable, but you need 2 components from that category. And then also a grain, and then a protein. And here's just kind of an example of the serving sizes for those reimbursable meals. So again, this is a look at breakfast where you need a milk, a fruit or vegetable, and a grain. So it's asking that you serve children ages 1 to 2, a 1/2 cup of milk, and then 1/4 of a cup of a fruit or vegetable. And then for grain, it needs to be at least 1/2 a slice of bread. It's kind of giving you an example of what a serving size should be for that age group. So 1/2 a cornbread or a muffin, 1/4 of the regular serving, the adult serving for cereal rather, and across the board it kind of goes through the age group. So this is actually just a good guideline, even if you're not enrolled in CACFP, of what serving sizes are recommended for those age groups. So it is kind of nice to look at. And this is lunch and supper. So again, it has the extra component of having a meat or a protein. And again, it shows you the serving sizes per age group. And I've heard some childcares actually say what makes serving sizes easy, if you have a wide range of ages in your childcare, is actually to have serving spoons that are of the 1/2 cup serving or of the 1/4 cup. They can be ladles. You can buy them at restaurant supply stores, and you can color code them per age group. So say you've got ages 1 to 2, you can have those be blue, 3 to 5 orange or something like that. And that way you can just, when you're serving each child, you can just grab the colored ladle to help you kind of make sure that you're giving an appropriate amount of food. And this is just to kind of show you that The kids' serving sizes, they go right along with CACFP and what they recommend. So it is, I mean, it's a pretty accurate program when it comes to serving sizes. And then, again, if you want more information, there's, I mean, all of it will be on the USDA website if you just search CACFP. But then for the state level, there's maine.gov, and that will give you, you know, links to people in your area that can help you either enroll in CACFP or give you some more information about it. All right, that is all. I would like to say that I really had a great time with you guys. And I'm sorry that you've had to listen to me for the past half an hour, but I hope hopefully you learned a little something, and I hope you all have a good day. All right, bye-bye.